Hello, trade professionals. Welcome to our Simply Trade News Roundup. Happy Monday. Well, not sure if you're listening on a Monday, but it should be Monday because that's when the episode comes out, right? And it's the best to get started with your week knowing what is happening and how you can implement that in your workspace, or if you have to talk to your team about certain things, or you might just want to get a little bit more information on some topics. I am in the studio with Lalo currently. Hi, Lalo. How are you?
Good, thank you.
We have Andy joining in just hopefully later. We'll see if that happens. You'll be surprised. So, we'll keep you on your toes.
Yeah.
But first off, before we actually start this episode or we engage more, I want to make a note that we've been talking about the forced labor compliance with emphasis on supply chain tracing course that we have started with 3 of our really good instructors to October 8th. That is the first date we will have it, which is awesome. So some of you guys get to, have more time to decide whether your whole team needs this training or just some specific people are going to need this training. Because this is, a crucial training, that a workshop even with real life experience and real life examples and work through that you're going to do in the workshop. Yeah, when we talk about it internally, like even at our meetings, where we know this is something that's not currently out on the market. And, we want to make you aware of that because, well, there may be, some, but as far as we know, and to the extent that we have created this workshop, because it was really specific, they actually did train about 300 federal agents that were trained on this, right?
Exactly. Uh-huh.
So, if you want some hands-on work and understanding this, what you can do in your organization, then this is a great course. Anywho, getting started because, we are here for some news. And we have articles for you. So our first article we're wanting to get into is the examining the implications of the U.S. bill targeting Chinese e-commerce imports. So basically, the U.S. Senate has introduced the Fighting for America Act to address the influx of e-commerce imports from China, aiming to enhance scrutiny on these shipments for illicit goods and counterfeit products. The bill seeks to bolster customs and border protections monitoring efforts by restricting certain product categories from the de minimis system, improving data collection on low-value shipments, and strengthening enforcement measures to ensure compliance and consumer safety in the marketplace. And I feel like this is, Lalo, and you can talk a little bit on the companies and, what is happening and how the companies are maybe affected by this and how it changes. But also, if you're, we all are consumers to an extent. And as a consumer, I think we should also be not held accountable, but I think we should look at what we're doing. Like, who are we getting products from? Like, who are we online shopping? Where are you getting your clothes from? I know there's certain really big manufacturers over there that have gotten into a bit of trouble, but like so many people buy from them because it's so cheap. But do we really want to support that? I think we may have to do some research or just find new outlets to get your clothes, I guess, or products that you're looking for, which I know can be hard, but I think we just have to do it. And it's good for awareness because no one thinks about these things. If I wasn't in trade, I probably wouldn't think about it. But it's, this is why we have the podcast. So anyway, what do you have to say about this certain topic? And I know you have other things also to say from this.
Well, the thing is that we've had this topic come up frequently on our either news or guests. So we recently had a episode with Cindy Allen who talked about this very specifically about this. And we've had other guests from NCBFAA that have come on and have also had comments and we've had discussions on that. As a matter of fact, today, as we record this episode, my next episode to record will be with Marianne Routen, and she is also going to come on and talk about that. And very specifically, I think it's very significant because she is part of the e-commerce group. It's a nonprofit group that advocates that's an advocate for e-commerce, and so she's very niche on that. And so listen for that. So that episode should be coming out in the next couple of weeks or so, depending on how quickly we can edit it. But that would be very interesting. But just to summarize, and I guess just to talk about this, you said something about this, Anik, about us as consumers, and maybe we should be more aware. I feel that that's part of what this law or this new legislation is trying to get at. It's trying to say, hey, let's collect more data, let's collect more information, let's understand the supply chain a little better so that we know we're not buying illicit materials or counterfeit products, whatever, just because those are all coming in under the $800 threshold, which is a de minimis here in the United States. So and then there's also more efforts in trying to increase, like, having a broker more involved in the process. There's others that say we shouldn't have a broker, et cetera. I mean, so there's arguments on both sides. So the good news is also that this is a bipartisan effort. So both sides of the aisle are both agreeing that something has to be done. Same thing with brokers and non-brokers. People who are for and against it also agree that there's something that should be done about this, just to make sure that, for one, that we have safer commerce, safer products that are coming in, avoiding even importation of drugs, like fentanyl. That's a very, very big issue with that, forced labor products, et cetera. So I guess also, again, back to your point, Anik, us as consumers, it's very hard for us as a consumer to have to just research and find out. I mean, it's very hard for the manufacturer, much more for the consumer, to trace the materials and trace the product and figure out, well, was this made with forced labor? Is this counterfeit? Is this, whatever, you name it, right? So, in my opinion, part of the data, the collection efforts that are being introduced by this new idea of the Fighting for America Act pretty much says, you'll have all that information in your hands. There's other efforts, of course, like we talked to Vinny Annunziato, for example, from CBP, who is talking about the transparency of information and of your shipments. So that would be a good thing to also follow, because it would help. And so again, there's just so many things that we can look at, but I guess just as a trade professional, just keep an eye on it, because if you are bringing in things under the $800 de minimis and you're used to just crossing things very quickly, not reporting too much, that's where you need to look out for now. You may need to provide a lot more data and a lot more information on your shipment. It may not be as strict as a regular shipment that's over $800, but at the same time, you may need to provide more information to get that going. So just keep an eye out for that. Have your systems in order, just so that you know that you are collecting that data, because sometimes we forget, or not that we don't forget, but we avoid it because we're just not required to report it, and so it may be better to take a look and see, well, now I need to make sure that these products as well come with all the data, so et cetera. There's just quite a few things that we can talk about, but no one better than to talk about it. But, like I said, listen to the Cindy Allen episode that we released a little less than a month ago, and the one that's coming up with Marianne Routen as well. So anyway, but that's my...
Great. Thank you. Yeah, I think that's and that's why it's so funny, because we talk about news here, but most of the news stuff that we're addressing which is good to know, right? I mean, just getting it out there. But we have full on episodes on these topics, right? Because usually you guys talk to the people that with whatever is happening right now in the world, and get all the information out there, which we can give you all the information in this episode. Clearly, because we need the professionals to do it for us. I mean, Lalo, you are definitely a professional, but we need the industry professionals.
Yeah. No, I want
specific.
Yeah, that's why. Exactly.
We just got a special guest in. Just kidding. It's just Andy. Andy Childs is with us in the studio now. Finally. Woo! Thank you. Traffic gets you. But no, Andy's here now. So I'm glad to have him. Now we're all back in routine. And
ever have one of those days there you're a day late and $1 short? Well, that was me this morning. So sorry, folks.
Well, you're here for this good article. No. The third one is really we have the third for last, which is the last one's always the best. Or what is it? There's a thing that you say about this. Save the best for last, which we did. And I think it's Andy's favorite. So perfect timing. But now we're going to address something that we have talked about a little bit, which is Chinese electric vehicles. And actually, in fact, I think we have even talked about this specific complaint that they gave. And it is basically talking that the European Commission remains confident that its investigation findings and subsequent measures against state subsidies for Chinese electric vehicles comply with World Trade Organization, WTO regulations. That's their statement, but it says that China challenges the investigation outcomes and provisional tariffs through a formal WTO consultation. So there's a lot going on, but we talked about this like months ago.
Well, it's when it was implemented. So in other words, here's what's happening, folks, is that the WTO, you hear that, that's the World Trade Organization. So what that is like a trade association of governments, of trade policy between countries. Unlike the WCO is the World Customs Organization, which is the customs entities of all the different countries. And that's where they work on rules and regulations to implement whatever the WTO, as well as their own local countries, come up with the rules and regulations of what they'll allow. So the WTO is in support of what the European Union has put forward, and that is to put in tougher restrictions as associated with Chinese electric vehicles. Now, why are they doing this? All this stuff is going on, and China is hollering and screaming, going, no, this is unfair and whatever. Well, that's not surprising that China is hollering and screaming about it, because what's happening is that European Union folks have clamped down on the use of forced labor. And unfortunately, China is doubling down on the use of forced labor. That's what this all boils down to. China is implementing unfair trade practices by subsidizing the factories that make the EVs, the electric vehicles. And second, they're using, forced labor. These are people, the Uyghurs, the Mongolians, the different groups that are forced to work in these factories for near nothing regarding pay. And instead of treating people fairly, giving them a decent wage and all that, China's doubling down. So Europe, the U.S. has already been doing some things. In this case, Europe has cracked down, and they're doing an investigation on it, and they have come back and said, there are problems here. So the Europe has imposed 37.6% additional tariffs on the Chinese EVs. So that prices the Chinese EVs, at or above the other EVs that are in the market. And so what China's trying to do is manufacture them and sell them at an extremely low price And they're not bad looking vehicles, by the way. I mean, Lala, you pointed that out to me when I went and looked at them. I'm going, dang, these are nice looking cars. But they have been made and manufactured in such a manner that China is selling them below market price compared to the others. Why is that? Because the use of slave labor and the other things that are going on. So all that to say is Europe is taking a stand. China is kicking around like a spoiled brat and going, woe is me, this is not fair and all that. But yet, thus far, it appears that the World Trade Organization is agreeing with Europe in the way they have administered the additional tariffs and what the stand that they're taking.
I'm going to move forward from this article. I feel like the last one's also the most not entertaining. It's not, but the biggest news that we got this week, right? Because there's not much really happening, but I think this one was like the breakthrough. So if you stuck around this long, you've made it to the breakthrough article, which is, so there are labor negotiations between USMX, which is United States Maritime Alliance, and ILA, which is International Longshoremen's Association, have stalled, which is always never good. Never good, increasing the likelihood of a strike at U.S. East and Gulf Coast ports. So the USMX has offered wage increases and retention of the current contract's automation language, while the ILA is demanding significant wage hikes and a share of pandemic-related profits earned by ocean liners. So importers are rerouting cargo and stocking up to prepare for a potential disruption in the upcoming holiday shipping season. That's terrible. So what does this look like? Like, what is it going to happen, or what is this affect? How does this affect the industry?
Oh, it's just another shot where, in my opinion, well, first off, understand this. The Longshoremen's Union are, this is their time. This is the way they use it, so they can play this out. So it has a potential negative effect on getting goods in for the Christmas season, because right now people are buying, and those goods that they've already bought, they've been made the orders, and there'll be a lot of product being put onto the water in October to get the products here for the Christmas season. So you have August, September, well, really September and October when the goods are on their way. They're going out on strike, and there have been wage increase proposals by the ports, basically the port management, and the ILA wants more, and they just keep pushing and pushing. I'm not a fan of this, but it's like, I'd love to talk through some of these things. So when it comes down to it, here's what it is. You've got, as it says, from Houston all the way around the ports across Texas then and Florida, all the way up the eastern seaboard. You got Savannah then on the other side, Charleston, and going on up, and Baltimore, and all the way up to Boston. And that's how this whole thing is affected. So bottom line, folks, this is one of those that, as far as your supply chain routing, what do you do about it? You're going to have to look at some of working with the carriers and see if what ports are not affected by this, because it looks like they're going to strike. Food for thought, looking at it, there's not a whole lot more you can do, except that your critical shipments, you may be looking at air cargo or air express, which is both modes of transportation are much more expensive than ocean.
Unfortunately, a lot of those shipments are already on their way over here, or they're already planned. I guess the hope is it won't strike. I mean, it does look like they're going to, though. It's very, according to the article, which this one came from Bloomberg, it is very, very close to going on a full on strike. So we'll see what happens.
All right. And there you have it. But we'll see. And we'll obviously keep an eye on that. And if it does come to something like that, maybe we can have someone on the podcast again to specify and go a little bit deeper into these issues, maybe from both sides. We'll see who we can get. But now we have made it so far to the fun fact, and you might want to bring this up in your family dinner tonight or text it to your friends, whatever you have going on. So Henry Ford was the first to embrace supply chain management because, where did it come from? Well, Henry Ford. Henry Ford is the godfather, they say, of mass production. Its innovations is assembly lines, spare parts, and vertical integration are thought to have revolutionized the manufacturing industry and influenced modern supply chain practices. So its supply chain management system included centralizing operations, improving coordination and efficiency, and implementing a multi-model strategy using trucks, trains, and ships to deliver parts and materials to factories faster and more cost-effectively, which we are still doing to this day, and always evolving. So that was my fun fact for today.
Hey, Anik, let me add a little story for you about Henry Ford in that same very context.
Yeah.
I learned this about him, is that one of the things he went and he was the first one he didn't invent the automobile. That a lot of folks misconstrue that, but he was the first to mass produce automobiles. And most people are familiar with the Model T, car and truck and all. And so he had negotiated how the engines, where they were being manufactured, and the engines had to be put into certain wooden crates. And these wooden crates had to have holes drilled in very specific locations. And they had to be a certain size and all of that. The panels and the top and the sides and all that. So when the factory that made the engines for him looked at him like, well, I'm drilling a hole, I'm not putting a bolt in it. I don't understand what the deal is with that, but okay, if this is what you want me to do, that's what I'll do. And so they would deliver these engines, and the factory workers in the Ford plant would then very carefully take apart the crates. And as they did, then they would hook up the engine and they would drop it on the chassis, but then they would take the panels and they would then take and flip them over and slide them into the floorboards on each side of the Model T. And that panel that was the engine crate then became the floor of the Model T at the time. And they would use some of the other parts and other, I don't know as far as if it was in the door or something else, but my point is that he double utilized the crates and all of that and engineered that. So that was a pretty slick little deal. So it didn't cost him any more money. That they had to do the crates anyway, but he just used that as a way to manufacture the Model T. So pretty slick.
I have another fun fact about that. I don't know if you all know. Do y'all know what Kingsford charcoal briquettes are?
Yeah, Kingsford. Yeah.
You know, like when you barbecue outside, Anik, and you put it in the grill, the charcoal briquettes.
Oh yeah, I know what they are. Yes. Okay. I know what that.
So Kingsford is probably the biggest brand that everybody knows, and it's the most. So here's another fun fact. Those were invented pretty much by Henry Ford as well. So that is a way. So Henry Ford was kind of like an environmentalist. So this is one of those things that are like stupid facts that I have in my head for whatever reason that only help me when I'm playing Trivial Pursuit or something, right? But anyway, so what happened is that as a byproduct of manufacturing the cars, like on their sawmills and all the lumber and everything, they wanted to figure out a way to reuse or repurpose that wood, all that wood. And so what they did is they pretty much invented the charcoal briquette. And so
wow.
They used to sell the charcoal briquettes through the dealerships. I think I remember reading something about that many years ago. But anyway, so there's another fun fact. So
wow,
and he revolutionized barbecue grilling pretty much. People didn't really think much about that, and because the charcoal briquette came out, it was used for other stuff, stoves and fireplaces or whatnot. But
Well, look at him revolutionizing trade management. That's crazy. Well, you heard it here first. And I know this will be a great conversation at your dinner table or in your group conversations.
Or when you're grilling.
When you're grilling. Exactly. Get your grill out tonight and have a little barbecue. It's Monday. Actually, don't. Maybe next weekend. For us, it's Friday. So this sounds like a great idea right now. Anywho, this is the end of our episode. So thank you so much for listening. And again, if you have any questions, regards, or anything you want to mention to us, let us know through LinkedIn, or you can just email us, or you can call us at, you can call Global Training Center and they'll refer to us. Anyways. Cool deal here. And yeah, we hope you have a great week. Make it a good one. And we'll see you next week. Bye.
Thank you very much for joining us. Simply Trade is brought to you by the generous contributions of Global Training Center. You can follow the show and GTC on LinkedIn or Twitter and other social networks. Make sure you check out the show notes in the description for a full rundown of today's show with all the important links. Also, make sure that you share this with a friend and subscribe on your favorite streaming platform. We really like hearing from you. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to rate and review wherever you listen to this podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest in the show, or would like to sponsor Simply Trade, or suggest any topic you would like for us to discuss, please contact us via email at simplytrade@globaltrainingcenter.com, or you can DM us on Twitter at simplytradepod. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. Happy trading. Simply Trade is not a law firm or an advisor. The topics and discussions conducted by Simply Trade hosts and guests should not be considered and is not intended to substitute legal advice. You should seek appropriate counsel for your own situations. These conversations and information are directed towards listeners in the United States for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only and should not be substituted for legal advice. No listener or viewer of this podcast should act or refrain from acting on the basis of information on this podcast without first seeking legal advice from counsel. Information on this podcast may not be up to date depending on the time of publishing and the time of viewership. The content of this posting is provided as is. No representations are made that the content is error-free. The views expressed in or through this podcast are those of the individual speakers, not those of their respective employers or Global Training Center as a whole. All liability with respect to actions taken or not taken based on the contents of this podcast are hereby expressly disclaimed.